30-minute reviews. I am Adam. Happy Saturday, everyone. Happy Saturday. Some big news broke yesterday. And the thing is, I kind of want to take a minute to drag Screen Rant a little bit. Because, look, I understand what Screen Rant does. I completely understand what their purpose is. Their purpose is to get you to click on their article and see these lists that they can scroll down, and in between each items and ads. So, as you scroll through, they get money, and I completely understand that. But if you're going to make a listicle, at least make sure it is somewhat accurate to reality. Because there was one yesterday, it was 5, and they always do this, where it's 5 good and 5 bad, where it's 5 TV shows from Nickelodeon that aged well, and 5 that aged poorly, and it's okay, cool, let me see this. And number 10 was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And I was this doesn't bode well for the rest of the article, because that was the one that aged poorly. Now, here's the thing. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is technically a Nickelodeon show. However, the way it's cited in the article does not cite it as a Nickelodeon show. Because here's the thing. Power Rangers has had a very weird production history over the almost 30 years it's been on the air. Oh my god, it'll be 30 years next year. Power Rangers has been on the air. The first batch of seasons until Time Force aired on Fox. It was part of Fox Kids' Saturday morning programming block. It was kind of the cornerstone of that programming block for a long time until it went away. Me personally, wasn't really a Fox kid. Was more of a a WB kid who liked watching, that's what Pokemon aired, and Yu-Gi-Oh! And all of these other things, Cubics, but, it aired there. Then it went to Disney, where it aired on, I believe, Toon Disney, then Disney XD, and it was, it aired there from whatever the next season was, I believe was Jungle Fury through Wild Force, aired on Disney, the Disney Channel, either the Disney Channel. I know it eventually went to Disney XD around the time of SPD when they did the 15th anniversary. And then after that, it went to Nickelodeon with RPM starting on Nicktoons Network and then going to, they did for season 17, I believe it would be, because 18 is Samurai, 19 is Super Samurai, 20 is, or maybe it was, I know Megaforce was 20. Right, so if we work backwards, then it had to be season 17. Season 17 would have been a reissue of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but not a straight reissue of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, because if you recall, the original run of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers ran for 3 years, and it wasn't 3 years of, with a few episodes like it is now, where it's 26 episode seasons. It ran for about 100 episodes, and it ended in a really weird way. I remember watching it again, within the last 15 years, and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers ends with the Metal Armor saga, and then it goes to Zeo. And it's oh, okay, I guess that's what we're doing now. It's we're gonna do this for 10 minutes, and then we're gonna go to Zeo, where they have entirely new, outfits and everything. And I'm assuming that going back to the original, outfits in the Japanese, Super Sentai has something to do with it, but I can't speak to that because I've never watched Super Sentai in any meaningful way. But here's the thing. I think it's a cheat to say that the Dragon Ball Z Kai version of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers deserves a spot on that list. I think, and I don't want to say the Dragon Ball Z Kai version because, Kai was, pretty good, and they redid a lot of the animation, and it was really, pretty, very well done, and it did reinvigorate a love for Dragon Ball Z, at least for me, and I think they did eventually go back and finish the Majin Buu saga, because I know that they ended it where Toriyama wanted to end it initially, which was end it with Cell and all of that. So I think that, to call it that feels like a reduction, but it was cutting out a lot of the filler, where it's you got, Green with Envy, you got a bunch of other stuff like that, and I think that it's kind of reductionist to say that it was, reductionist of, reductionist of Dragon Ball Z Kai, to say that. But I don't think that, I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing the way this show ended, and the way Kai was. I think that the issue really stepped in when we got to, what was happening on Power Rangers. It was, I would say, maybe a best of show, but not quite a full season of a show. So all that notwithstanding, they said the Power Rangers belong there. And look, if you're going to sit there and say we're looking specifically at the distilled version of Power Rangers, there is no accurate way to look at this and be like, oh, okay, then it fits, because there is no other show, because Power Rangers had a profound impact on children's television going forward from there. So it's not fair to say that it deserves this spot on the list, but on top of it, to say it's the Nickelodeon show that aged the worst, it's like, well, yeah, if we're going to talk about the version of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers that was, cutting a third of the episodes fit into a 26 episode season, then yeah, of course. And of course, 5 or 6 of the episodes is just Tommy becoming the Green Ranger. So yeah, of course it deserves a spot there, but that's not what they're referring to. They're referring to the show as a whole. And look, Mighty Morphin isn't the strongest season. It's probably, if we were to do a ranking, it wouldn't be in my top 5, I don't think. But who knows? I feel like that's different. But that's not what we're here to talk about, I say, 7 minutes into this podcast. I'm here to talk to you about Turning Red, the next Pixar movie that is coming out in March. Now, it is currently slated to go to, up until yesterday, it was supposed to be a theatrical release. It was on the theatrical release slate, and yesterday, it got punted to Disney Plus, included with your subscription at no additional cost. Now, it's not going to be it's not going to be like, if you look at, like, Raya and the Last Dragon, or Cruella, or Black Widow, where you got to pay that $30 extra. No, it is, we are going to put this on your streamer exactly as is. You can watch it. You don't have to pay anything extra. It is yours to watch, as long as you have a Disney Plus account. Now, how do we reconcile that with what this means for the show? Again, I think that following on No Way Home, we can't point to the box office, we can't point to COVID as the problem anymore. I think this is a lack of faith in this. And, let me rephrase that. I think to an extent COVID can be blamed, at least partially, for this. Because I think people are going to go out and see Lightyear. If Lightyear were coming out in March, it would not be punted to streaming, because people are going to show up to see Lightyear. I don't think people are going to show up to see Turning Red. I don't think there's been enough marketing on Turning Red or anything like that. And I think that the fact that there's been, no marketing for it, and just the one trailer that I've seen, one time in theaters, I think that, it is indicative, to me at least, that this has been in the works for a long time, but they just wanted to wait to announce it until it was closer to the release date. Because the thing is, it's there hasn't been a marketing blitz for it. I don't think they even showed the trailer before Encanto. I don't remember seeing it before Encanto. I remember seeing it before something else. Maybe it was No Way Home. But it was definitely not before, it was definitely not before any other movie I've seen. I've seen it if I've seen it in theaters twice, or maybe it was Encanto, but if I've seen it in theaters twice, and it's coming out 2 weeks after the Batman, and I've seen the Batman trailer in theaters countless times, then I think that's, indicative of the larger problem in hand here, which is, they're not, they haven't been marketing it. And I think that was intentional. And I think that they were hoping for a reason to put it to Disney Plus. and it just never came properly. Because then once No Way Home comes out and No Way Home does No Way Home's numbers, you can't blame COVID for an undersell. And if I'm someone who works at Pixar, I'm like, oh, this sucks because we keep going to streaming. And at this point, you can't say, well, COVID, because, you know, if I'm someone who works at Pixar as a visual effects person, I'm looking at this and I'm going like, oh, so, you know, you'll put out other things in theater. Like, Lightyear is not skipping theaters. There's no way Lightyear is skipping theaters. But, like, oh, you'll put Lightyear out, but you're not going to put out our movie. And then there's also the question of, like, well, this is an original movie. This is an original movie with an Asian lead, and these keep getting punted to streaming, while movies about characters with white leads keep ending up in theaters. And I know that Marvel's kind of thrown that away because, you know, Shang-Chi and what's it called, and the Eternals both had leads, but they also had much bigger budgets they needed to make back. And I think that it's a bigger, you know, there's a bigger conversation to be had about what's going on with what's going to streaming versus what's not going to streaming. I think that it's a problem. And I think that this speaks to the overall quality of the movie more than anything else. In the same way, I think that, you know, the party line spewed about why they're moving Morbius is a load of horse shit. Like, I don't believe that Morbius got moved to April because they wanted to give more room to No Way Home. And it's like, well, No Way Home may carry the opening weekend box office through Morbius' release date, but that won't be because of, you know, that won't be because of the quality of No Way Home. It's like, I don't know how much No Way Home did last weekend, but it certainly did not do. How much No Way Home does this weekend is going to make them look like asses. And I'm not saying that because it's opening against it's continuing against the 355 and other things. I mean, unless they're like, the only way that this works is if Sony is poised to unseat Avatar or Endgame as the number 1 or number 2 grossing movie of all time, and they need a little extra push to get them over that, and they want to do a reissue in theater with some deleted scene or something like they did with Endgame to get it over the hump, which it didn't even need that. It ended up beating it without the special edition. But wow, that is fucking slimy. I just put like moisturizer on my hands and it is gross. But like, if that's the case, then I could see it, but also it probably won't hit that point at here. And look, I don't think that putting Morbius, like, I think that that's got to be it. I mean, unless they're looking at their analytics and they're saying, okay, by this date we're going to be at this many dollars. If that is accurate, then putting Morbius out here will keep us from hitting some arbitrary box office record, which I don't think that the math necessarily adds up in that case. Like, where it's like, then why not just delay it a week and be like, okay, we'll take our chances against, against Moonshot or Moonfall. We'll take our chances against that. We're not going to push it into April, where it is going to be cannibalized. Not cannibalized, but it's going to be eaten alive by 2 other movies, and it's competing against stuff. Because here's the thing. If the Batman is fantastic and Morbius is shit and I'm not doing this podcast, I'm seeing the Batman again if I'm going to go to the movies at all in April. If I'm like, I need to go to, I feel like I'm going to go to the movies today, I'm going to go to the movies, so let me go and, you know, see something in theaters. If that's the case, I am going to see the Batman. If Morbius is shit, because the Batman is still going to be in theaters. It may not be in premium formats like Morbius is going to, but the Batman will still be in theaters. If it comes down to what am I going to see, it's going to be the better movie. And with more options available, I'm at that point. Like, here, Morbius is coming out. You can go see Scream again on its 3rd week or 2nd week. You can see the 355. But there's really nothing else. It really was a fantastic spot with nothing else like it coming out. I just can't imagine that they're like, oh, well, we don't want to hurt Spider-Man, so we're going to delay it to April, where it's, it's fighting for positioning. It just makes no sense to me. Where it's like, if I'm Jared Leto, I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is bullshit, because this is, we made this movie, we put all this work into it, and now you're setting it up to fail. But it feels like it's a movie that they have zero confidence in the same way that when it was announced, I was like, yeah, this movie's probably going to be shit. And then, that, and I think that, to an extent, Turning Red's another one of these cases where I'm not saying it's going to be shit, but I'm saying that it's not strong enough to put out in theaters and pay the distribution costs and pay all of that. Now, I'm sure the exhibitors are not thrilled about this, because I'm sure that AMC is not happy that one of the two Pixar movies this year is going straight to streaming. And Encanto wasn't a total loss. It made $207 at the box office, and then it's going to be a ratings driver on Disney Plus, and on a budget of $120. There is no budget details available for Turning Red, but I mean, maybe they're looking at it and being like, I don't think this movie is going to make maybe the movie cost a lot more than Encanto. Maybe that's why. If it cost a lot more than Encanto, I could see it being the reason why they move it to streaming. Because if it costs a lot more than Encanto, and they're looking at Encanto and being like, okay, this movie made $207 million, it's an original concept, I think that's the only reason it would make sense, is if it's like, okay, this movie only made $207 million, but then in that case, why not just delay it to, why not just do what you do with Marvel and push everything down a release date? Where it's like, no one is particularly wedded to the November movie, considering all we have from that is concept art and the title, for Disney Animation. Like Lightyear, if you move that to November, that will get asses in seats. If you think that the pandemic is going to cause this to happen, then moving it to July would solve that problem, being like, hey, we're going to do this. Because that's a valid option on the table, too, if you do that. And then there are weeks in, like, August and September where there are no releases, and there's probably a reason for that, having to do with vacationing and things like that, but there are opportunities later in the year where you can put out these movies and not have them lose money, if you're genuinely concerned about COVID. I think that Disney is kind of reaping what they sow here, though, because I think that people didn't see Encanto in theaters, not because of the fact that it came out during a pandemic, because people show up for pandemic movies, No Time to Die, No Way Home, even, Shang-Chi and Black Widow. People show up to see pandemic movies, but I don't think that people are necessarily willing to do that with a family of 4, or even like kid plus adult, to the theater, and then see a movie that's maybe not good, but also on top of that, possibly, if that's happening in March, I think it's possibly just like, well, in 30 days it's going to be on Disney Plus anyway. I mean, it's not like it's a huge deal to wait 30 days. It's not like back in the day where you had to wait like 9 months for a movie to go to VHS, and then it was like 3 months or 6 months, and it takes so long for it to go to VHS. The theatrical window has shortened so much due to Disney that it is no longer, the cost benefit no longer provides for, well, why are we going to put it in theaters at all? If we can just put it to Disney Plus, if no one's going to see it and they're going to wait till it's, like, that's got to be what happened, is the engagement numbers from Encanto on Disney Plus, because it went on Christmas, the engagement numbers from that, compared to the number of people who saw it in theaters, makes it where they're like, well, why are we going to bother with the cost of the theatrical exhibition when we can just put it onto the streamer? And to blame COVID is kind of broad, but not inaccurate, because COVID is the reason that this happened. If COVID didn't happen, this hybrid approach wouldn't have existed as quickly as it did. But yeah, I think I think this is something that, like, is just going to lead to more content from Pixar in theaters, based on existing content, and I think that's going to be problematic going forward. If it's just creating movies like this, because if Lightyear does well, we're gonna get a Woody movie about the TV show that Woody's based on. We're gonna get movies about all of these other characters and things like that come out in theaters only. Maybe a Bug's Life too, but there are so many other things that are gonna go based on existing content, and anything new is gonna go to Disney Plus and never have the chance even to expand an audience and go to theaters. So and that's the thing too. It's like if you look at the number of people who went to watch Black Widow, and then look at the number of people who watched Hawkeye, the carryover isn't great. So I don't know how, like, I gotta look at the numbers on this more concretely, because it's just a thought that popped in my head, but I gotta look at the numbers more concretely, to see, like, why would that be? Because it's an interesting thing to look at, is what's the rate of people who went to see, what's it called, who went to see Black Widow. How many people in total saw Black Widow? I'm gonna use some dubious math on that to get number of ticket sales. But if we do number of ticket sales to that, compare that to the Nielsen rating for Hawkeye, which is like 1.2 million, it doesn't quite mesh that it's converting to Disney Plus. So I like the Disney Plus numbers are substantially less. I mean, I would say probably by a substantial margin, than what's it called? And then the numbers that we get from theatrical. So I think that it loses its chance to grow an audience for a new thing, and I think that that's part of it. So we'll wrap up there for today. Later today on Beware of Spoilers, there will be an episode with the review of The Tragedy of Macbeth. I did postpone the 355 because of snow yesterday. So we'll be back with that later this week. Until then, have a great rest of your week.